Okay, cool. Plan weekly meeting, 24th of April. Gabe, over to you first. Can't hear you.
Dave, your audio is not working.
Know what is going on with my Yeti
Yeah,
microphone, but
it's working
Now
now.
we can.
cool. I just want to take a second to kind of walk through what we are communicating externally in terms of our roadmap for the year. You can check out the slide deck. I won't go through all of the things. I think we're well aware of it, but we're definitely focused on work items. We've already introduced tasks, which is great. We're working on OKRs, which is going to be awesome. And I think one of the major themes is sort of representing workflow. We did a great UX research project on mental models for work items in general, or how these relationships, these different planning artifacts go together, and learned a lot there that we want to continue to carry forward. And then I think ultimately we want to get to some flexible planning templates. Not sure what this is going to look like yet, which is why we just have boxes, but there are lots of different agile methodologies that different organizations use, and we want to make it easy to use GitLab for those methodologies out of the box with as few as little configuration as possible. So we're going to continue to explore what that looks like over the long run. And then we're also investing a lot in value stream analytics and DORA 4 metrics, value stream dashboards. There's some really exciting stuff there. The Optimize team is doing an awesome job exploring how to extend all of the data that we already have and leverage all the data we already have in the platform to help provide health metrics and other things along those lines. There's DORA metrics. We also, I'm open a great issue exploring flow metrics, which is a common thing across a lot of those agile methodologies. And then we're investing, of course, in AI assisted workflows. But I think a great kind of summary of it all is what we're working on now and what we want to get done by the end of the calendar year. I think we want to be able to migrate epics to work items, that framework. We want to start working on the status field, which we kind of talked a little bit about, and making that a first class thing in the product, so we can move away from having to use like labels for that, which is going to be a huge customer win, and also is going to be the foundation for workflows and other things we want to build next year. And then another thing that we need to do in terms of competing with some of the other players in the marketplace is custom fields. And I think we're looking at that maybe as using data tables or something along those lines. Definitely none of the solutions are finalized, but these are just the problems that we want to tackle during the year. And then we want to eventually migrate issues to using work items as well fully, and then make some improvements to roadmaps. I know the product planning team is really interested in moving the kind of save using queries work forward. So that's going to be exciting too. And then value stream analytics and deliverables. We want to we're right now focusing on the value stream dashboards, making those generally available, adding some configurability to those dashboards. They're Optimize team is doing some great work around AI-enabled workflows for predictive forecasting, which is cool. And then I think we want to consolidate some of the different analytics pages and make those more kind of dashboardy type things, so that they can be kind of tailored to what metrics different teams or different stakeholders are interested in looking at any given time in terms of snapshotting. And then adding more business value metrics, and then extending the VSA integrations to support data from external planning tools and or collaboration platforms. So high level, I think these are the most important things when we talk about later. They're the things we want to get done by the end of the calendar year. We need to push hard to do that. And I guess I just wanted to let everyone know that this slide deck exists. This is what at least product is using to communicate externally and to internal stakeholders. And so in terms of things that we are committing ourselves to, it's what's outlined in these slide decks, and then everything else is going to be sort of based on what we have capacity for and what we learn as we progress through the year. So I just wanted to highlight that as a big picture thing. John, you have or I guess other thing is just, are there any thoughts or pushback to the scope or kind of what we're focused on? Feel free to comment, and John, you have the first response.
Yeah, it's not pushback. I was just wondering about work items, requirements as work items, because it's still listed as a priority. But yeah, I thought with the disbanding of the certified team, the intention was to actually take capacity away from doing anything with work items. So what's the status there? Is that a mistake or just something that's left over, or is it intentional that I guess the product planning team would work on this in Q2?
Yeah, product planning is working on it. We're actually working on it now. There's been some work. I think we're trying to do just the bare minimum, right? And I think the back end is already completely migrated. And it's just the front end that's not. I haven't scheduled that yet for the like next 2 milestones, so. I'm guessing like 16.4, 16.5.
I think it would be good to figure out to at least finish the migration requirements and not invest more beyond that. But that way we can pay down some of the technical product debt there. And I think there's going to be a lot that we get for free that is on the requirements roadmap already in terms of multi-level requirements, breakdowns, and all of the things that already exist in the work or will exist in the work item framework. So I think once we migrate requirements, we don't have to invest enough to continue to add value to those use cases from the work items framework as a whole, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and just from the engineering standpoint, like I would be supportive of finishing it, because I think just in terms of efficiency, like having that tech debt removed will make us faster in all the other things that we're doing around work items, I think, and around we might run into this thing with requirements, and if we don't complete the work that we started, it'll slow us down in other areas. I was just surprised to see it there, like, because I thought that from a product point of view, like, we didn't want to invest in this anymore, like, but I am happy to see it from an engineering perspective.
Yeah, just the reason why we haven't prioritized front end is because we don't have designs on it. We haven't had a designer, and also we're light on front end with the Vue migration and boards.
Cool. Thanks. We have a couple open comments still from, I think, Gabe and Melissa on this, or do we want to move on?
Oh, mine was just to say, I think we should complete the org for all the reasons everyone stated. And if I purposely left it vague as to like next and later, right? But if y'all think that's not the right bucket, we can shift it. So just let me know. I'm in.
All right, so I have the next one as well. So 2 interesting features that I've heard before, at least one of these I've heard before, but I didn't see in it. But Gabe, you mentioned one there. So first one was saved filters and views, and then the second one is, I haven't really seen it all before, but I think would be interesting, is embeddable views. So like, just now that I'm aware of the wiki and pages a little bit more, and what we need to do like competitively, in terms of competing with like Confluence or something, is we need to be able to embed these views and embed filtered views and things like that into the wiki. So is this something we've looked at before, or is it on our roadmap anywhere?
I think for the save views, I know UX is doing a lot of exploration here as part of the UX OKR for this quarter. And then I know that product planning is going to be driving this forward. So I think, from a critical path standpoint, getting epics migrated to work items as quickly as possible will then open up the rest of the year for them to prioritize work towards the kind of vision prototype and the direction we want to go. Yeah, so I'll let Amanda speak because it's her area.
Yeah, totally. I think this is where we should be going, but this is well after like save views and queries, which comes after migrating Epic. So I don't even see this until next year, but definitely a place we want to go.
Yeah, I'll just chime in. I put this slide together. This is meant to be external, right? Like shared with customers. So I included things that are more baked, things that are more certain. And because this is definitely somewhere we want to go, but as far as I know, there hasn't been any kind of like technical feasibility design, right? Like it's very early. So it wasn't included. But I think once we get through, like Amanda said, the bulk of migrating items to work items, and we have more time to focus on this, I know design is coming up with like what this would even look like. I think in like a month or two, it would be at a place where it's like, okay, we can say this is next year reasonably, right? Because we know what it is.
I was just going to add in there, I think one of the challenges with like embeddable views and things like that in Markdown or in the content editor is the fact that we have 2 different editors right now. We have the content editor which is based on TipTap, and then we have the Markdown editor, which Brett's been working to migrate. I can't remember to what. But that like adds a whole layer of complexity when we think about doing like embeddable things into content areas like that, because we either have to duplicate the effort and do it with the content editor and the Markdown editor. But we've also even found just having the two is a lot of overhead from I guess like a technical perspective, and even running the experiment with AI where you generate summary comments, like I don't think the button to do that was on the content editor, but it was on the Markdown editor, and you end up getting like this sort of drift between the two. I've talked to Donald a little bit about this, but I think we're going to have to figure out as a stage how to navigate that, because it adds a whole lot of complexity, especially when you think about getting into embeddables and then even real-time collaboration in that editor. So I don't know what the solution is, but it's a problem that we should tackle together as a team, I think, at some point. And I think it's Matthew, since I think you own the content editor and the wiki and all that stuff, maybe that would be a good thing for you to try forward if you want. Don't have to, but.
All right, cool. If that's everything, then Jan, you have the next point.
Yeah, this one is more backend specific. I added a link to a POC which I worked on recently. It's a POC about generating a REST wrapper on top of our GraphQL API. The reason is that our long-term strategy is to use GraphQL as a primary API, and at this point we have REST API completely separated. So adding REST API at this point means developing just a separate API. So this attempts to generate a REST wrapper on top of GraphQL. This one is a little bit different than previous attempts because it works like generating static code, I mean API definition, instead of trying some dynamic magic. So it's more like what we do with GraphQL documentation generation of GraphQL documentation. So if you have some thoughts or ideas or concerns, please leave there a feedback or whatever you think about it, because so far it seems that there are no roadblocks which couldn't be solved. So I plan to create a blueprint for this and then see if it would be accepted or approved by principal engineers, so we could go with it. John, you had a question or comment about this?
Yeah, I was just interested in what the primary concerns of the working group are, given that, like you said, it's been attempted a couple of times, and this, I mean, there may be no perfect way to do this, right? To like wrap the GraphQL API for a REST API, and this seems like the solution with like the least problems, the least number of problems. So, yeah, what were the issues that were raised by the working group?
Yeah, so I think that three major issues which were discussed was there's different deprecation strategy, because for GraphQL we allow to deprecate something after 6 months and then remove it with the next major version, which is not the case with REST API, where we rely on major versioning. So breaking changes can be removed when we increase the major version, which actually haven't happened in the last 5 years or all the time I work at GitLab. So this is quite not very deprecation friendly, or at least we are very conservative in bumping major versions. I think that there is no simple solution for this. I was hoping that if we want to use it, at least for new endpoints, we could just mark the new endpoints as experimental or mark them as some GraphQL specific tag. So users know that actually these are quite stable, but this may be changed depending on the underlying GraphQL layer. The another problem was pagination, where in REST API we use offset, in GraphQL we use keyset, and this still seems to be a concern, but Brett mentioned or pointed me to GraphQL code, which probably should make this possible without too much effort. So I want to try this out to see if it would work. And
I'm
another
still
concern,
positive
yeah.
about that.
Yeah. Okay. So if the outcome is that this wouldn't be possible, then we will have to decide whether it's acceptable to mix both paginations, or if we would need, for example, to bump the major version and introduce keyset for REST API, or separate both completely. But personally, I would expect that for new endpoints, it would be still acceptable to use keyset pagination for new endpoints in combination with offset pagination, but I think that this is probably not, there is no consensus about this yet. So trying to implement offset in GraphQL would be primary goal for now. And the last bit which was discussed was performance in GraphQL, which is noticeably worse than in GraphQL, than in REST. If you would just try getting list of issues versus in REST versus GraphQL, then you will notice that it's really much slower. But based on some measurements, I think that it's not because of GraphQL layer itself, but rather of the extra logic we do in our GraphQL API, specifically per resource permission checking and not having some specific fields optimized. But the point is that if you would try to fetch, for example, only ID or EID or some other basic attributes, then I was getting quite similar numbers if I compare both, or if I compare this with the wrapper. So yeah, the point is that GraphQL should be able to be equally fast as REST API, but we will have to decide whether we want performance per resource permission checking, which I think we want, even if the price is worse performance, or if we really need to do some optimizations. Yeah, so these were so far the major concerns which were discussed. And yeah, if you think or if you know about some others, it would be best to think about these rather sooner than later, so we don't find out too late that it's not possible to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say this is something I've thought we should do for a long time, either one way, one direction or the other, so we don't have drift between the APIs, which we do now, and a lot of customers are frustrated with that. So I think this is awesome. I think you highlighted this, but my only concern is the performance of GraphQL. If we were to like go to V5 or something like that and have everything generated from, our GraphQL endpoints, I think that would be awesome. But I don't know how we improve performance. So thanks for the context, though. Yeah.
So regarding this, I would love, or I think that it's important for this wrapper to be first used in combination with existing endpoints. I mean, I would love to avoid trying to do replacement of everything with the wrapper, but rather being able to use this wrapper in combination with our existing REST endpoints. So we could test it in production on some new endpoints where some performance degradation, if any, is not critical. Yeah, so we could first slowly introduce it and iteratively edit for new endpoints, and then iteratively migrate some old endpoints to the new ones with the new version of major API version. So yeah, but I can imagine that for replacing existing endpoints, performance degradation might be a problem, and it would require some performance investigation of problems. Yeah. Any other questions regarding this? If not, Gabe, you have next.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm glad to see the plan stage contributing to this. I know this has been a long time in the works with the working group and the idea in general, and it's good to see be on the forefront of like the first actual endpoint being implemented. So thanks Amanda and Jan for taking this on.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and I had one just one comment. Is it, depending upon the performance, would it make sense that if there were really sensitive endpoints that we might leave them as non-GraphQL endpoints while converting the majority of other ones into GraphQL? Would that,
Yes.
I mean, it's kind of a hybrid approach, and
Yeah,
wouldn't be the
exactly.
ultimate solution, but that might be one way of
yeah, I agree. And yeah, I'm on the same. I agree with you, and for this reason, I think it's important that this wrapper could be used in combination with these native REST endpoints. On the other side, from long-term point of view, if we know that one of my contributors of this performance degradation is extra per resource permission check, then the question is, okay, so do we want this per resource permission check in one API, but not in the other one? And then what is the point of having it in one, but not in the other one? Yeah. So
yeah,
it's kind of weird. But yeah, you are right that that's definitely an option. And for sensitive endpoints, I can imagine that we will keep them for a long time until we are sure that it can perform well with the wrapper endpoint. Cool. So unless there is other question, okay, you have next point.
Cool. Yeah. So as we sort of introduce time boxes to work items, we have the ability to assign an iteration or a milestone to an issue or to a task. We did some initial solution validation on the expected behavior here, but as Julian's been working on this, some of the other questions have raised, like everyone's raised some great questions about how does this extend to things where you might have 3 levels or 4 levels. And I think there's a proposal that kind of fast follows the MPC for preventing double counting on time box reports. But one of the sticking points is like, how do you handle, like, I think with weights, we're picking, the aggregate weights from all the leaf nodes, and that's what shows up. But tasks or count is a little bit different, because if you assign, a time box to, let's say, what is today an epic directly, does that count as one thing on your burn up or brown down charts, or do you take the counts of all the children items, or do you use the same approach with just the leaf nodes and only count the leaf nodes of all the items? Because it might not make sense if you have an epic that has 5 issues in it, that has each issue has 5 tasks, to count that as just one thing while you're counting the aggregate weight of all the tasks, if that makes sense, if it's present. So I was curious on what y'all thought would be, in terms of consistency here. And then would love to continue that with next round of kind of customer discovery. So curious if you had any thoughts. But this, I brought it up here because it does impact, I think, all this, planning hierarchies, all that good stuff. So it's worth kind of getting aligned as a stage.
One thing that I remember is that one of our like larger customers wanted to assign a weight to epics as a kind of target weight or a kind of upper limit, and then when they would weight issues underneath, they would have like basically an idea of like, oh, we thought this would be 100 points, it's actually 120, can we get rid of some, and that's, so to me like they were two completely different things almost. Like there's assigned weight and there's roll up weight, and we want to show them both and treat them both differently. But then I don't know how that translates then to like a burn down chart where, like say you're looking at a bunch of issues and some have tasks and some don't, and some of the tasks have weights and some have issues have roll up weights and some have assigned, like I don't know, like, do you ignore the assigned weight to the issue if it has roll up weight? Otherwise, use the assigned. I honestly have no idea how you would even approach that.
I think right now what we validate is that customers expect. It's most intuitive for customers expected if there's an parent, a weight on a parent, and then there's weight on the children. You use the aggregate weight of the children is the thing you report on. But within the new work item view, we want to show the weight on the parent side by side with the weight on the roll up weight. So you can see like, here's the estimate, actual estimate, basically. So you can learn from that. I think lots of customers are interested in that. Is a great data point on getting feedback for themselves on how well they're doing those sort of like higher level estimates. And so that's where like a lot of the validation that we did was focused on weights, but we're sort of now thinking about counts, and if counts should follow the same pattern, because that's one of the things we didn't touch on as heavily in the customer interviews that we had for validating the weight roll up, if that makes sense.
So the question is that if in the burn down chart, taking aside the weight roll up, which probably makes sense with prioritizing the children weights for counts, the question is if I have objective or epic which has some children and it has some sub-children, whether I should count it as one epic or summary of all its descendants or all its leaf nodes.
Yep.
Yeah, that's. I don't use burn-down charts. My first thought is that just summary of leaf nodes would make most sense. Like if I have epic or issue which is broken down into subtasks, I would expect that the total count is just summary of all its children or subtasks or whatever. But yeah, I can imagine that it doesn't match all the use cases.
It also seems like there's the issue between I'm weighting an issue, so I'm giving an estimate. I haven't broken it down into tasks. I have no, it's not broken down at all, and even breaking it down into tasks might not be complete. So, in other words, you might say, okay, you don't understand the full scope. You break it down into a couple tasks because these things have to be done. They're both weighted 1, but in general, the issue is a 5 because it's. I don't know. It's a tough question.
That's a thing, Brett. Like at the higher level, people want to retain their estimates as well, like at the epic level before anything's broken down. And then they want, once the work's in progress, to see what's the estimate versus the actual, what shipped, what's new or wasn't planned, all of those things. So there's a lot of granularity, and I think Melissa's point is valid. This should be something we should take offline as a bigger discussion.
Let's do that for the sake of time. Nick, if you want to verbalize your comments since you took the time to write it out, go for it. But I think a separate sync would be great.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of other questions here around like because we don't have weight on epics and we don't have the ability to assign an epic to a time box today. And like, what is? I mean, weight's part of that consideration, but like, really, what's the expected? Like, if I can add something to a milestone, like, why am I doing that, and what do I think is going to happen to all the child issues and etc. Like, there's a broader question there, I think.
Yep. You can do that with objectives now, though, where you can assign those to milestones. So those that theoretically show up. I think let's have a separate meeting to sort out what we want to research and validate, and we can go from there.
Yeah, and the
Yeah, and you can
meeting,
verbalize. Sorry.
Gabe,
Yeah,
it's
just-
helpful to have like specific lists of things that you're looking for feedback on, right? If they're specific behaviors or the way things are displayed, just like more pointed questions would be helpful to help the team know what to look at.
Sure.
Just for more context about this discussion with weights and counts, I raised this question when reviewing the merge request, and although we don't support epics at this point, we do have objectives and 9 levels of objectives and key results, which are now displayed in the issue list of milestone, I think. And this will be displayed there. So I was wondering how this would work together with this. But if the plan is for now to just restrict this to issues and tasks, that's possible too. But then I was wondering if it isn't confusing that users see also objectives and key results in the list of milestone issues, but these are not reflected in the burnout chart. But if we want to restrict this to issues and tasks for now, that's entirely possible too, but there will be this inconsistency, what we show in the list versus what we show in the chart.
Makes sense. Okay, I'll take a follow-up action to get some more pointed questions and schedule a meeting. I think I had the next one. This is more of like something that's upcoming, because I know the service desk category, which is owned by the Respond group and Monitor Stage, is exploring maybe potentially adding a new work item type called ticket. Details and all that stuff is still to be determined, but I wanted to ask the engineers, like, are we at a place from an architecture standpoint where we can add a new work item type to the database and not have to rely on like the enums and hard coding stuff and all of those things we are trying to move away from with work item types?
I don't want to skip Jackie's point, but as far as I know, we are not done with addressing technical debts with using specific work item types or issue type. I think we still use it, but we know how to actually use it for new code, like relying only on widgets. I don't think there is a specific blocker with introducing a new type, depending how specific or different it would be, but yeah. I'm not aware of blocker itself. Only concern would be that still some missing bits will have to be developed if they need something extra special. One thing which I think we don't have solved is permission checking per type, or we have some specific work item type checks, but I'm not sure if it's very consistent at this point. But yeah, I don't know about blocker itself.
All right.
I certainly
Well,
think
I'll wait
Mario
till I
would-
hear. Go for it, Brett.
I do think Mario probably has a better overall, or certainly has an opinion on it. I know he's been working recently to try to move forward the complete removal of the issue type in favor of the work item type. So, and I do, because of the work with objectives and key results, I do think that we've got most of it in there to be able to add another type, but I'm not 100% on that. So, yeah, Mario might have a better opinion on that.
Cool. Thanks. Yeah, I'll wait to get the proposal from Respond on what all of the ticket look like, and I'll collab with Mario async on that stuff and loop in anyone else that wants to contribute.
You have the next point as well, Gabe, just to let you know we have 10 minutes left. So you might want to
Cool.
pick.
We can do the 5B offline. I was just curious, like how engineers decide to pick which issues to pick up next, and where do y'all look, and what's the decision-making process, that sort of thing. But we can do that async. I think I'm more curious to talk about the next thing, which I just happen to have coffee chats with a few engineers in plan lately that all sort of like independently shared feeling a bit isolated, which and we'll bring this up in the retro probably too to discuss async, but I'm curious if anyone has any ideas for how we can like become a bit more like team centric or something along those lines. It's really easy at GitLab to feel isolated. I felt it myself frequently, just where you're going about your daily work and you're working on your own things, and then all of a sudden you do that long enough and you feel disconnected from everyone, and that sort of then like kind of is a hit to motivation and kind of job satisfaction, a bunch of other things. So I was curious if anyone had any ideas for how we can actively combat that sort of from setting in, if that makes sense.
If it comes from engineers, we had a nice experience within project management with a few pair programming session and debugging sessions. So it feels more like a teamwork, at least for front-end engineers that we have. And also, I think we should encourage people asking questions and getting answers in public channels as well. Because personally, I have a fair share of DMs, normally daily, and given answers. And while I'm encouraging people to go public with the questions, sometimes it's not possible, but maybe I should encourage more, because I think we're just interacting on one-on-one basis, while it should be shared with the team and brought for the public perspective. I think next point is from Amanda.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think when folks demo in this meeting, it's very successful, but maybe we could back it up. And as engineers are taking work that could affect all groups, mention it before you even dive in this call to kind of solicit rather collaboration among other people, ideas and things. That's it. Danica, did you want to verbalize your point?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I know that I've seen a lot of awesome demos here, and I know the work that I'm doing sometimes isn't as it's not the same kind of demo as engineering work, but one thing that I'm going to be working on is trying to share more often with this group, because some of the research we're doing would affect a lot of the different groups and especially downstream. So I think it's also just a good reminder that this space could be, that we can share a lot of different types of things here. And just like +1 on the sentiment of sometimes feeling isolated. So I also will try to schedule some more coffee chats too, especially with some of the engineers here who I haven't had a chance to work with directly.
Right.
And I guess I'd just like to say that it'd be nice to see. I'd like to see more mentions in the actual Slack channel, in the planned Slack channel, not just in here, because I don't feel like we can. It'd be neat to discuss in the channel a little bit more. or at least just see more awareness of it.
Yeah, so I don't know about you, but I find the Q4 team day pretty awesome. So I think Amanda, you mentioned before that you would like to repeat this, and it's probably on one of us to organize it. So if people think it would be valuable, yeah. Oh, awesome. Yeah, I'll assign it to you then, Amanda, and I don't have to do anything. Awesome. Yeah, that'd be great. And then also, like if you remember before the last one, folks were already volunteering a couple of ideas for sessions or anything. So if you'd like to do that, that really helped us organize it because then we could figure out like how long to make the sessions, and we knew that it wasn't going to just fall on its face. Like I don't know about you, but I personally make a much better hollandaise sauce since the last team day. So, and it was worth it, you know, just for that alone. So, yeah. Any ideas for sessions? And also, like, maybe we can just open the issue and just check with people what time works for them, and we'll target it in Q2 at some point, which starts on May the 1st. Awesome. I feel bad now. We're actually ahead of time, and Gabe had another point, but he's already left.
We could stop recording and have a social moment.
Let's do that.